Oh,
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the collective. Shaun, I cut you off there. You're just about to say something, and then I started the intro.
no, you did.
Yeah.
That was perfect.
So we have some great stuff for y'all today. We have some really good information, continuation from yesterday, actually. And initially, we were talking about after action reports, and then we got into some other interesting avenues, doing iterative things, teaching 2 levels up. Um, getting comfortable with looking in the mirror and understanding yourself. That all those good things. But we had an interesting question from a couple of days ago that we haven't got to that I would like to start with because they
Oh,
are
hang on a sec.
okay.
Hi, Scott. How you doing?
Hey, Scott. Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, you guys. It's awesome.
No worries. We're here to have fun. So let me pull this up real quick and we'll talk about it. Boom. So a few days ago we were talking about getting little wins throughout the day. And Winterstorm 427 hit us up with this one. So do you do any of you have a time where a small win that you overlooked at the time turned out to be a much larger win later in life when you look back at it? That's a good question. Shaun, do you want to kick us off on your thoughts on that one right off the bat?
Yeah, sure. But I'm going to take the lazy way out. I'm actually going to refer to something that I talked about just the other day, and that is on my basic para course. And I was just doing my best. I guess my best was good enough. I got flagged to be the first guy out of the door on the first jump. In the sense of, we know you're going to jump, so you're it, but you better jump or else. And so, that moment, and it was explained to me in a whole different way. I'm just giving the Coles notes that are much more palatable. But when it was explained to me, it was in no uncertain terms that I better jump. And so I did. And at the time, I was freaking out. And at the time, I didn't understand how important that moment was to me in my military career or in my life, to be honest, because it was explained to me in a way that I then understood for the rest of my career. Do your best, Taylor. And so, in the moment, it was a tiny little, not hardly even a blip on the radar, I guess. But it was that moment that taught me to step it up way more and to represent way more and not to let my team down ever. And yeah, it was a tiny little win, but man, it really was formative for the rest of my life.
That's a good one. I don't know if I would be taking the easy route, but that's a great one. Scott, you got a point? Any thoughts on this one right off the hop?
Yeah, I can go back to my basic para course as well, and I didn't finish. I was in J stage and I broke my ankle. It was pretty severe, so there was no way they were going to let me get on board the plane. So I ended up going home. And when you say it's a small win, I made it through the course, the toughest parts, minus the hill, and the blessing in that was I didn't end up going to commando. I went to Germany for 5 years. So for me, that was a huge change in my life. So I was quite, that was one of those little blessings that came along. So I was quite happy with that.
Yeah, Germany would be nice. I tried to get I tried to get posted to Germany. They did not let me go. But
Everything happens for a reason.
that's true. Absolutely. We also have my brother Bruno. What is up? Able to make it? Nice to see you.
Yeah. Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
Hey, Bruno, how you doing?
Very good. Yourself, Shaun. How about you, Scott? You go?
Hey, doing good, buddy. Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. Just give me 1 sec here. I think that it's because at the same time somebody's at the door, obviously.
Of course.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah. I'm just gonna go and put the dogs here. Just 1 second.
Raj, you do that. We'll get you after. There we go.
It's always good to have an early warning device.
Right. I was thinking about this as I put the question up, and I don't know if I can think of a time where I had a small win that I overlooked. there were some wins I had that I thought at the time were like they were good to go. I was pretty happy with, but I can't think of one
Run
off
back.
the top of my head. But
I
that's
I I blasted through so many small wins without realizing that I blasted through them. But that wasn't because I was like winning on all the time. I guess I was in a weird way. But it was just a matter of I never really I wasn't used to winning a whole pile of small ways before I joined the army. And then when I joined, there was lots of small wins, but someone put something in front of me and I'd try to crack a home run with it. And if that's called a small win, then I was hitting small wins on the regular and they just became not normal, but they just kind of became not what I did. It's just kind of what we did, or at
mm,
least the guys that I hung out with. And so w- I I just feel like I had a boatload of small wins at the front end of my military career, and that's what kind of got me used to not winning, but it just got me used to facing a problem or facing a challenge or facing some form of adversity, and just looking like a day behind me and think, I smashed that one yesterday. I'm going to smash this one today.
mm,
And it just became a mindset of tiny little wins that I just got used to over a period of time. So I did win a lot at the start of my career, but wins for me, not against anyone else, if that makes sense.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Bruno, you
absolutely.
got any? Oh, sorry. What were you gonna say, Scott?
Oh, I just said, yeah, absolutely. Totally understand that. Like the
Yeah.
lottery, you win $10 tickets and $1 tickets and free plays, but you don't always necessarily win the big lottery. Little
Mm.
wins along the way, right?
Absolutely. I got a little. I'll tell a story in a minute, but about little wins. I call them small victories. Bruno, do you have any thoughts on this question at all? Has there been a time where you had a small win that you overlooked at the time, which turned out to be a much larger win later?
Oh, I would have many of these opportunities either within our military career or after when running my businesses. Actually, that happens a lot when you're running your own businesses or you're working. When you get stuck in the rat race of everything and thinking, think about how we were learning when we first joined with the basic training. How every day they'd show you a little win, right? Little thing you did right, and then it was this, you did that one right today, and then by the end of our career, nobody was noticing any of those things. Nobody was
Mm,
noticing that you were doing because it was just um, expected of you. And I think
mm,
that now in executive coaching that I do with the CEOs, they get stuck in that point too, because they get it about now, they're around 50, 55, and they're saying on paper, I should be happy because I have everything they told me to go and get, the house, the job, the this, the that. But why am I not happy? Why am I depressed? And it's because I think everybody has forgotten to do the little things. To often ask them, I said, when's the last time you read a book that was fiction, that was non-work related, non-family related, or non-relationship, how to get better to the next level? When's the last fiction book that you read? Or what is a hobby that you've learned recently that it's not, once again, work related, or that it's going to get you a networking event or whatsoever, that's was specifically for you?
yeah.
And I think that that topic for me falls into that when you say celebrate the small wins, because sometimes when I'm in other groups, they have the bragging book that they say, "Where's your bragging book?" And where are you going to brag about it? Because we're so at the other end of the spectrum of we're actually going the other way of not. We're gonna I'm gonna say this here, shit on ourselves more than anything
Mm,
else. So celebrating the little wins is the way to go for sure. It creates momentum.
yeah. Yeah, they're small victories are crucial, I think. And I'll tell you guys this story from my PLQ course back in the day. We were in Wainwright and it was miserable, and it wasn't really one of those super cold days where you can put more gear on, but it wasn't really a nice day that you could take your gear off. It was cloudy and it was cold, and if you had your jacket on, it was too hot, but if you took it off, it was too cold. It was one of those days where you're just like, it's kind of crummy. And we were waiting for orders or something, and my buddy and I were just sitting there on the side of a hill, and the sky had been gray all day long, and out of nowhere, the clouds just broke, and him and I got hit by this sunbeam for probably a good 40 seconds. But it was enough to just kind of warm our bones back again. And we looked at each other and we were like, small victories from Wainwright. And that was the theme of the whole time we were in the field for that area, was just we started looking for those small wins. You know, we saw chipmunk one day and we were like, yeah, small victories. Just, and if you keep specifically looking for those wins continually, it changes your outlook on what you're actually doing out there, because it could have just been, you know, we could have just sat there being miserable, grumbling about it the whole time, but instead we started looking for things that were wins, and I found it quite helpful.
I'd like to just not push back or challenge you on that. I'd just
Sure.
like to reframe the language just a touch, just for anyone who's listening. I know that the four of us get this, understand what I'm about to say, but for anyone listening, I just want to be a little careful with the words. So, looking for a small win and seeing a small win are two different things.
Mm.
If you're standing or sitting or you're in Wainwright and it's not the best and you're looking for small wins, okay. But now what if you don't see anything? Now, what if you're spending the entire day looking for a small win and you don't now what? So the clouds never part and now you're getting rained on. Now it's really cold. Now you don't get to eat for a week. Now. And so what if as you're looking, you don't see any wins? So how I prefer to approach it is, rather than desperately looking for a win, I use the term desperately just to make the point. Rather than trying to find it, just let it occur, man. Just let it show up. And so I'll give you an example. I was on my Pathfinder course. We were getting into the submarine. I was a patrol commander, and we move up into the front of the submarine. The submarine split up in a two-way section, top and bottom platforms, set up for special operations roles. And so, as getting a tour of that, one of the seamen, one of the submariners, takes me for the tour at the front end and said, "Your guys are going to be here. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. And oh, by the way, you might take a note of that." And it was a box of Tim Hortons. And as he said that, he smiled and then he left. And that left me as a patrol commander and my two IC standing looking at each other thinking like, what the heck? Because we just didn't get to eat on the course. I mean, we were hungry. And so there was a box of Timbits there. And it was from the captain of the boat. And he left them there for us. And I guess it was a bit of a tradition for every Pathfinder course that the submariner skipper would hide a box of donuts for the troops, because everyone knew that we didn't get to eat. And so I looked at those Timbits and I thought, okay, that's cool. We'll hand those out to the boys on the slide. And you know, each guy got pulled up and got his Timbit and then carried on, and etc. And so it was a small win that appeared out of nowhere. When I got on that submarine, I wasn't looking for food. I was too mission focused. But when it showed up, that was a win. That was an unexpected small win that all of us treated like it was the Holy Grail. And so those are the kind of wins that I like, is the unexpected wins that move the needle on attitude, on vibe, on positivity, on things that improve morale or what have you, rather than desperately seeking for a win and it doesn't show up. And now what? It's just a thought.
That's a great thought. It really is. The
Shaun, Shaun, I enjoyed the way that you kind of like stretched that out to really make it clear. I think for me, after listening to what you just said, would be the word expectations, right? If you have expectation, you're going to find some wins everywhere. And then you don't, like you said, you're going to be crushed, which is most of what happens to people. They have an expectation about, I'm going to make the selection. I'm going to start my business. I'm going to sell that many T-shirts. And then they don't happen. At the end of your segment, you said something like, well, you know what? Like that box of donut that was totally unexpected. And I was like, there it is. unexpected, because when you go through your day, let's just say that when we've been through those days, right? We're in the field, you're wet, you're cold, you're miserable. You said, that's it, I can't go anymore. But then the guy next to you makes a joke, gets you through the day and all that. And then at the end of the day, you go, oh man, you know what? I didn't find any wins today. But then you start looking at what happened today. You said, no, actually, my win today was he made me laugh. We were stupid at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, and then that was a good time, because I still tell those jokes when we were sleep deprived.
100%.
Yeah, right. So I think that I love that the way that you took the conversation and you brought in the unexpected. What I love to do now is, because I think, you know, what was coming up for me when we were saying that, it was that change the things you look at, and the things you look at will change, which is go towards your day with intentions of doing this, creating this, and maybe having this happen, and then let it happen, because it's never going to show up the way that you think it is. And that's why I think
No point in forcing it.
Yeah. Right.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. And I think, thank you for the clarification, because you're absolutely right. It's more about, it's not so much seeking the win, it's the recognition of the win when they happen. You're absolutely correct. Any further thoughts on the small wins before we jump to another topic, before we dive on?
Just the importance of them. Just that they're important. And Chance, you and I have actually talked about this in live chats. I've said, hey, you know what? By the end of today, you and I are going to get a small win on this new thing called the collective that hasn't even started yet. That was back in December before we kicked it off live. And so, you know, just a small win. If a small win hasn't popped up organically throughout the day, and if it's towards the end of the day, like Chance and I were, it was quite late at that point in the evening. I just said, hey man, let's crack out a small win. I don't even care what it looks like. It's going to happen now. So let's come up with one now, and let's get it done now. Let's end the day on a win. And we did. It was no big deal. It's not like we cracked the code. We didn't figure out how to make parrots talk. We just cracked out a small win. And it's a good feeling, right? Am I wrong, Chance?
No, it was awesome. And actually it helped quite a bit, because we were, as the group of us, I can't say all of us because you weren't involved in this one, myself and Zach, we were thinking, we were already in tomorrow. We were already like, yeah, we'll work on this in the morning and we'll get this done and blah, blah, and all that stuff. And you were absolutely correct in like, let's smash out something right now. So that we can go get that, check mark. Like, yes, we have accomplished this and it's a good win, solid. And then we can move into tomorrow. And it's always good to bring yourself back into the right now, the here and now, because tomorrow never coming.
And for anyone listening, like, don't think that by the end of the day, if you haven't organically bumped into a small win, that you sit back and think, oh, that was cool. If that hasn't happened yet, you don't have to contrive or develop some sort of goofy win where you kind of half-ass something and kind of think to yourself, even though you know it's not true, yeah, that was a win. You know when it's a win. It doesn't have to be like full fireworks like Canada Day win. Just something that you know is righteously true. It was a win. It doesn't have to be magnificent. It's just got to feel like, yeah, man, that was good. And end your day with that. It's not a bad way to end the day.
Pretty good. And it actually leads into radical acceptance, in terms of, you know, you have to accept what is. And when you're constantly thinking about the future or the past or whatever happens, you're not thinking about the here and now. And when you are, you know, radically accepting something, that means it is. It just is. Not good or bad or anything, but it just is. So I think it lends itself to that in terms of finding a small win, because those wins happen.
Yeah.
You just have to recognize them. Scott, you had something? Oh, I think we lost you. I got no audio. I can't hear you, Scott. Dang it. He's not muted, but
it feels like it's important.
It does feel like it's important, I think. Oh man, there we go. He's gonna work on that. We'll have to come back to him for sure. It shouldn't be that. I thought we had it sorted out beforehand, but all good. Technical issues. There we go. How about now? You want to try it, Scott?
Oh, I can pipe in here. When I was initially going to have my book Ghost Keeper published,
A little bit broken up.
Maybe
Dang.
while Scott's sorting
Yeah.
that out, maybe Bruno can jump in.
Oh yeah, Bruno, you got any points
I thought
on?
so. How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Still nothing?
we can hear you now. Go for it. No, we got you. Go for it. Try that. Ooh, maybe the camera off. That might help. And it's funny. Every time I highlight him, he
Or Bruno.
It's all good. It's all good, guys. No, I'm loving the conversation. That is.
There you go. I got him. I just go for it. Go for that. We'll try to bring him back in a second.
About Shaun, I love how you're using and you're describing it all when you were saying about a win today shouldn't be like the 1st of July or the 4th of July for the people listening down south. But I think that's it. I think when I was listening to you, I was trying to say, okay, well, what's a win today? What's not a win today? And as I go and do my training and stuff like that. But one of the things I found that's super funny that Tony Robbins says at the end of Date with Destiny, he says there's always a handful of people that didn't get in the last 6 days, didn't get a breakthrough. And I'm going to a little bit of graphic here. What he says, it's because you people think that a breakthrough is a lightning coming up your butt, shooting out your eyeballs. Everything is like this incredible experience when you actually had little breakthroughs every single day. You just didn't notice them because you weren't paying attention, because you were looking once again in expectation of what it would look like. And I think that you described that again very, very well. And to say, for me, the only thing I would add for that was that like what I'm noticing is a lot of people like us, we have, the 4 that's on today, we have something in common. We all serve together and we know each other because of the circles we are in and the work that we continue to do. The thing is that a lot of people have expectation and of, oh, okay, well, I'm like with this guys. I see a lot of people when they reach out and they say about this podcast, about this other thing, and what they're not putting into order because they want to do like Chance and like Shaun, and these guys their podcasts are going well and they're doing all these things. They're not taking into account of their own personal self-awareness. Because when you describe something to someone, I'm a big picture kind of guy. If you start going into details right away, I'm lost. But, my wife is a detail-oriented person. If I start with the big picture, it's too overwhelming for them. They go, oh, I need to know, okay, where does it start? When does it start? What are these are all the details. I'm like, what is it going to go? I need to know what's going to look like, who are the players, and where do I need to be in all of this? And I think that's the key here is for people to start doing a lot of self-awareness. What's important to me, and I think that the pandemic has helped that, because a lot of people are questioning their relationships, their career choices, their way of living, and I think that comes down from self-awareness of what's important for me, and then from there, you can describe what your small wins are going to be. Because my small wins aren't going to be the same small wins as Shaun or as Scott or as you, Chance, right?
Absolutely.
That's a fascinating point that you raised, Bruno. Not that there was something in there that I've never heard before, but how you put it together there just made me click and think, oh, this is kind of interesting. I wouldn't mind talking about this little moment, because what you said was, with the pandemic and people, this, that, and the other thing, and people are trying to figure out who they are now. And I've often coined it as figure out your why. Get a blank sheet of paper and a pen, write down your why. And once you've got your why written down, now assign a priority to it. And now you've got your priority 7 out of 10, 11 out of 10, 1 out of 10, whatever. Now you got your priority. Now go get after it. So your why, your priority, and then action. And so I talk about this on the regular. Chance talks about it on the regular. But what I haven't really thought about too much, or now I am because of what you just said, is this. It's kind of a critical moment in history in a sense that, there's a bunch of people out there that have just come through this moment in history. And we all freaked out in one way or another, all of us.
Yeah.
We went this way, we went that way, we went that way, we went this way. We all freaked out in a little way. And so now we've got the aftermath of who was I then and who am I now? And so it's like this moment in history where everyone gets to decide, do I want to be cool like Fonzie or do I want to keep on being a goof? And so, like we all
Always
get
Fonzie.
always
Always
Fonzie, man.
Fonzie.
Always Fonzie. And so, we all get a moment to decide if we want to drive towards, because it's a new moment where people are newly thinking about, oh, I kind of blew it a little bit, but I want to do it right now. And what does right look like to me? And so right looks like, just aligning with cool people and doing fun things that are positive. And
Mhm.
everyone knows that. It's just that if you're listening to this right now and you're looking for a reset, maybe you made some mistakes in the past. I have. We all have. If you made some mistakes in the past, it doesn't mean that you got to make mistakes for the rest of your life, or the mistakes that you made in the past don't mean that you can't change it all in a split second today. Don't be that. Be this. Move forward. Move forward positively in maybe a new way that is awesome. And so I kind of dig what we're doing right now, having these kind of conversations where if anyone's listening, don't feel like you're stuck in a tiny little box of your own making. Kick a box wall down and go step out into a different sort of light and look at life in a new light, in a new way, and align yourself with cool people who are doing fun things and start enjoying life in a whole fresh set of eyeballs. That would be my point.
And that's beautiful, Shaun, because what you just said is right on point. But let me kind of like throw this back at the people that are listening to us. Most of the question we probably, the four of us, get a lot is, where do I start? Right? What are the little increments? Because we are talking about little wins. And like I said, some people will say, hey, Bruno, I'm not in shape anymore, man. I haven't ran a 10K since I left the battalion. And I'm like, why would you want to run a 10K? Right? Like we had to do it back then because it was part of the job, and it was, you need to be fit. Now today you can be fit without having to carry 85 pounds on your back and doing silly things, up he sees me down or whatever, right? So it's about, to them, all they were thinking about is that, how can I run my 10K in under 50 minutes again? Or how can I get back on the ice? Or and I'm like, dude, pick one thing. Let's start with that one, which is the one right now. Like you said earlier, let's prioritize those goals. Let's see which one right now I can affect and which one that will make the biggest change. So maybe create some momentums, because some would be like losing 30 pounds would be contrast of a lot. But then if you say, well, what if I start answering some emails or something like that, which these ones would give you momentum, because there's small little tasks that can be done right now and creates that momentum, which then you say, okay, once I've done all of this and I've relieved this stress off my plate, now I can jump on to the next one.
Mhm.
And I think that's what came up for me when you were saying about that. Where do we start? Which is the biggest question. Where do I start, Bruno? I'm just in pain and I want the pain to stop, or I'm constantly yelling at VAC, or I'm doing this. What can I do? And I said, okay, well, see, you served in the military, and for how many years? 10, 15, 20 years, you were told what to do. Now let me reverse that for you. What do you want to do, man? What do you want? What do you want to do? You get to choose and pick. So where do you want to start? And I think that it's not just our veterans, it's not just our brothers and sisters that we serve to. Guys, it's CEOs of companies, they do the same thing.
Mhm.
They get to a certain point where their skills no longer serves them, the Peter principle, right? Not to the extreme, but the Peter principle. And then they go, what do I do now? What now? Right? Vets say, what now? Yeah. And then the CEOs say the same thing. What now, Bruno? I've got the company. I've got the family. I've got the 3 houses. I've got the cars. I've got the vacation. What now?
Do you know what they don't have? Satisfaction.
Yeah. Fulfillment and growth that's not career driven. Personal growth that is not in part of relationships, or like personal growth. Like right now I'm doing my Kundalini yoga teacher training and sound bowls. If you would have asked me that when I left, the military, that I'd be doing yoga and sound bowls and psychedelics and the whole thing, you'd be like,
Yeah.
you're crazy. But
Yeah,
I am.
shake your head. Yeah,
Yeah, because we grow.
absolutely. That's awesome. I heard this great line once that was, the CEO talking, and he was saying, "Okay, I've done 30 years in business. I've done the family. I've done all these things, and now it's time for me to retire. And I don't like golf. Now what?" Because like there's kind of a standard answer to that, right? For most, the stereotypical answer from business is, oh, now that you're out, you can go sailing, or you can, play golf all the time, or you can do whatever, and you can relax. But people who get to that level of, the pointy end of the spear of any of any lane, they don't want to just sit around. They don't want to just sit around and do nothing. Nobody gets to the pinnacle of whatever job they're doing and then goes, cool, and just like
Well,
Actually, what they
except
don't want to do is they don't want to think about it. I know, because I've worked with them. I've worked for them. I've worked alongside of them. But whatever. I've done a bunch of things with people who have high net worth and have roles that are considered to be CEO-ish. And by the way, some of the most ill-balanced people I've ever met. And the reality is they hyper focus on a singular track. And I'm generalizing now. I'm not going to say that all CEOs are like this or all blah 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 or are like this high net worthers, but they're dysfunctional as a generalization. They don't understand what to do on day one after the retirement because they've never given it a thought because they're ill balanced. And so
you know who's like that,
when that
Shaun?
moment comes out, when that moment happens, just like any soldier who retires, day after they retire on day one of veteranism, they're ill balanced, and it's because of a number of things. One would be institutionally, no one was hanging out with that CEO saying, "Hey, bro, guess what? It's all about to change tomorrow because you've never given life a thought." And so no one's hanging out with that guy or girl who's a CEO to square them away and say, you're in for a world of hurt. You're in for a world of surprise, because that's just not the way it works out there. And then in the military, we all kind of, in a dark humor sort of way, we all kind of laugh about how, the food that you get fed is so bad that it's time to perfectly kill you when you retire. And so, that's kind of the sort of dark humor within the military. But the reality is that the system kind of kills you in a way because no one talks about it. It's treated like the inevitable is going to happen, but we're not going to talk about the inevitable. And when the inevitable happens, you're on your own, pal. Go figure it out. And so that's obviously a problem. And all of the folks that are out there who've already faced these kind of things, all of the veterans who've been retired for 1 year, 10 years, 20 years, whatever the case is, they're not talking about it with the guys who are just about to retire because no one was communicating well in the military. No one is communicating well within the CEO world. And all of the communication that needs to happen nowadays is actually happening if you look in the right places. But it wasn't happening a decade ago. It's easy to find it now if you go looking. You don't have to be painted into a tiny little corner when you retire and think, now what? It doesn't have to be that way. You've just got to go get in front of it before you face that retirement.
And I think you're right, Shaun, because I think there's a little bit, like you said, it's a little bit better. But I still saw it when I was doing some talks on the bases or even in the DHQ. I even had a base commander, wing commander, come to me after one of the Bell Let's Talk thing that I said, and I mentioned just that. I said, guys, start thinking about your second career, the second part of your life, because if you join at 18, you're going to be like 20 years later is not that much. You're going to be 38. And I said, I know we were sold something that we're going to retire and play golf and do these things. The people that are struggling the most are the chief, the sergeant majors, the people that have done 20 plus year and have been institutionalized and are still on the dream of, you know what, like me, what opened my eyes was when I was sitting around the lunch table and the guys were going, oh, just 2 more years, man, and I'm going to be pumping gas. Or 2 more years, I'm going to be a greeter at Walmart. until one day I was like, guys, you gave 20, 30 years of your life to your country, and the best you can come up is greeter at Walmart. I think that there's a bigger conversation that needs to happen here, which is, what are you going to do for the rest of your life? Because that's what's starting now, tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
That's starting tomorrow. And I'm going to tell you, their wives and everybody that hasn't seen them, that's been living alone for 30 years because they were traveling the world and doing the job, come home and say, who are you? Complete strangers. So now that's relationship they never worked on. That's family stuff they never worked on. They never worked on hobbies or, created a plan of being busy after this. And then it's just a big shitstorm. And then they reach out and they go, Bruno, I need to start a business, or I need to go back to work, or how do I put in a claim? And those are chiefs. Those are people that have been in for a while. So I think it's conversation. And just recently, we lost a friend, a diver, and Pat Molden. And, people were kind of reaching out and seeing what's happening and ask some advice about charities. And so I helped out. And then I was still talking to the coxswain there, who's a really great guy, about that gap, that specific gap. And I said, you should invite people like myself or other people to come and talk to the boys and have a conversation about a few things that happens. At the minute you cross that front gate, that's it. Nobody's checking in on you. Nobody's going to call and everything. And they say, no, Bruno, we're tight. Now, have you called anybody that's left? Just do a personal test. Have you called anybody from your unit that has left? No. So
No.
they're not going to call you. Nobody's got, the job needs to, the machine needs to keep on rolling. So those are the kind of like the biggest shock that I would have. You're going to be in pain. You're going to be having to fight with Veterans Affairs, and then nobody's going to check in on you. So you're going to have to find your new tribe, which is what you guys are creating, right? The availability of veterans to just, hey, what do you like? Whether it's T-shirts, motorcycles, being on boards for PTSD or chronic pain, or being at, Can Praxis, doing the walk for veterans, whatever it is that floats your boat, that gets you to connect with people that are like you, that are doing something, right? Other than 10 grams a day and playing Call of Duty with drinking monsters, right? So you want to be able to be around people that are driven that way. And I think that's, once again, finding there's tons of them, tons of teams and groups. And that
I was telling my son this yesterday, actually. I was like, what the greatest thing about being an adult is? You get to do whatever you want. And you know what the worst thing about being an adult is? You get to do whatever you want. Right? There's no one checking on you. If I want to sit on the couch eating Cheetos all day, I can. Like, nothing's stopping me from doing that, except this guy at this point, right? Back in the day, sure, you'd have, your sergeant would come kick you out of the shacks and say, let's go, we got work to do. Not anymore. Not anymore. It's all you. Once you're out, it's all you. Scott, how's your audio working? Is that good to go now? I'm hoping it's. Oh, no. I still can't hear you.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah. Oh,
Dang, Scott, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
I'll throw this in, since this is what this show does. This is what this podcast is. It's the Tangent Podcast.
Yeah.
It is the start with the question and see where it goes podcast. So you'd mentioned, you do 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you get out of the military, and then what? Well, that's the classic case of, it wasn't an ambush. You knew it was coming. And if you didn't do any homework before you got out, now what? You're on day one of the rest of your life, a new life. And so I was that. I mean, one morning I was wearing my black ninja outfit from JTF2, sitting at my desk as a warrant officer, team warrant officer. And then that afternoon, I was a civilian driving down the highway with not greasy hair yet, but heading in that direction. And no one knew me. I didn't even know myself on the streets of the civilian world. And so, that was 25 years ago. I've been working for myself for 25 years. And so it's tricky, man. And 25 years later, I'm still figuring things out. I do it better, way better now. But on day one, you can guarantee I wasn't doing it well. I was doing my best, but it wasn't easy. Because guess what? There was no one else out there, man. There was no other JTF2 warrant officer who just got out, who had some pro tips for me. There was me on my own, not reaching out to anyone with no other signposts out there, guaranteed. And so I just had to figure it out, and it was not easy. But here's the thing, if there would have been someone that I could have looked at and thought, that dude's squared away, he can help me out, you can freaking guarantee that I would have recruited him as an asset. I mean, as a friend. And so that's what I'm saying right now is if you're, and I've been saying it for a while, and that's kind of why we're doing this whole, the collective thing is, I'm not a big deal. Chance isn't a big deal. You two aren't a big deal in the grand scheme of things. But once we start putting our heads together and talking, that's when it becomes a big deal, man. It's not about the individual who's chirping me right now or who's going to chirp next, whoever. It's about the four of us talking about common themes that we have some experience in, some lessons learned, some sort of guiding principles that will be different from guy to guy, but are generally themed in the way of how to do a positive lifestyle change in a better way through all of the mistakes that we've made ourselves personally, which everyone out there will face themselves if they're going to try to do it alone. You don't have to. Just take a moment, take a deep breath, sit back and think, do I want to try to figure it all out and face all of the problems by myself? Or do I just want to like shoot a dude an email and say, hey man, hey Bruno, I was listening to you today over on the collective and you said ... Could you maybe ... That's how it begins. Just start a conversation.
That's exactly how it goes, actually. I've never didn't answer an email no matter what was going on, or connected that person or whatever, right? And then no subject is too taboo when it comes to, when somebody needs a hand, because you're right, Shaun, we're just going to pull back and isolate and go, I can figure this out, or nobody gets me, or I want to do it a certain way. I see it when veterans start their own businesses and they're like, oh, this is my baby, or this is my thing, and I don't want anybody else to touch it because whatever, right? And then I think that's what I've found is that, if we would get together like we are doing here and start having these conversations, the ability to be able to be vulnerable and to ask a question. I think I started learning and growing the most when I started to say, I don't know, but I'm willing to have a look, right? I'm willing to figure it out, right? So if we have somebody writes a question in here and it's something that I don't know too much of, I'll be the first to admit, and that has opened way more door than when I tried to fake it. I go, you know what? I'm not too familiar with this. I've maybe heard of it or something like this, but I'm willing to learn or to find how it works, or what is it that you need, because that I know I'm capable of, right? To trying to take something, figure it out, and then do it.
Yeah.
One thing that I find is detrimental to that path of getting better is believing that you're special. My problems are so special. The problems that I've got are way different than your problems because my problems are special problems. There's special problems that you'll never face because my problems are so special. I'm special. But here's the reality.
Complex PTSD.
I mean,
right?
I can tell myself that I was special. And I mean, holy moly, my career actually started with special operations. So it was actually in the title of my career that I was supposed to be special. But when you leave the military, you ain't special, bro. Your problems ain't special. Your career wasn't special. What you did wasn't special unless you live in the past. And if you want to live in the present moment, you ain't that special, nor are your problems, because they've all been done all before you ever took your first breath. All the problems that you're facing have been faced by most of humanity well before you became a twinkle in anyone's eye. And so the special problems that you think you have aren't that special. And you believing that you're a special human being, you're not that special. Everyone around you has got problems, and everyone around you has solutions. You've just got to connect with other people to figure out how special your problems are or aren't, and how special you are or aren't. And once you've got a sense of contextualized, who am I in respect to everyone around me, now you can get on with addressing things, the positives and the negatives, then you can sit back and take a more fuller understanding of who you are out of the military versus in the military. Get to know cool people, hang out with them a bit, and see what kind of specials you have. And you might be surprised that it's not that special. We all have special problems.
You know, what's kind of funny actually in this, we got a comment before we went live from a 4-1 Alpha, and it says, "It strikes me as peculiar that you refer to yourself as the collective. As from my observations, your primary focus seems to be on addressing personal obstacles and promoting personal growth." And I was going to bring this up, but we naturally just kind of came across it, which is what we just been talking about, is the fact that the collective has the answers to all of the personal problems. You just have to ask around. And that's about it. I'm going to try this one more time.
Collective problems, baby.
That's
We're all
it.
facing them.
Yep. Scott, let's try you one more time. Let's see if we can get you in here. How does it sound?
Okay, how's that?
Hey, we got you. Yeah.
Okay.
So we got like 30 minutes worth of thoughts to bring us up. Bring us
Dude,
up
Hey,
to speed where
sorry,
you're sitting.
You're like a magician.
sorry about your luck, guys, but I'm going to take over now.
Give her.
Good, give
All
it.
you.
All right, so I'll just trip back a bit to where Bruno mentioned what are we going to do with our lives. And one of the adages I've used for many years, probably 2 decades now, is if today is your halfway, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And the reason I say that is there are so many people that their lives are cut short and they've never taken the opportunity to experience things. And in many cases, like you look at young children with cancer and so on, they pass away at 8, 9, 10 years old. They don't know. So, 4 is their halfway and they don't get that opportunity that we have. So, for us, many of us were in our early 20s when we were overseas and I didn't think I was going to come home. There was many times where, the bullets were flying and it was just, you couldn't worry about dying because it was inevitable is the way it was.
Mhm.
So at that point at 25, I looked at life and I said, wow, if I make it to 50, I wonder what the hell I can do. So, here I am, I'm 55 now and I've lived that adage, if today's my halfway, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And I've had a lot of struggles and a lot of hurdles that I've had to jump over. I've had some major heartbreaks and upsets and losses, but at the end of the day, I'm still living by that. If today's my halfway, so I'm 55 now. I don't think I'm going to make 110, but and I don't mind because the last 10 years are usually the worst ones anyway.
Well, I'll
But-
meet you there because I'm 59.
Right on. I should be you as a Pathfinder leading the way. Well done.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing with the little wins, and sometimes we don't even realize it's a win until it's happened, and you have to reflect back. So when I was getting Ghost Keepers published, as an author, you go through tons and tons of rejections, and it was a daily occurrence. I'd get a rejection from this publisher and that publisher, and it was heartbreaking, because everybody had told me, "Oh, your story is going to be great," and it did make it to number 1 in Canadian military history and historical biography in Canada to number 1. So I was quite pleased with that. But prior to that, I was just succumbed to depression because I was being beaten down every day by rejection after rejection, and there's only so many self-help books you can read to rise above that stuff. And so this one day I had secured the biggest publishing house in Canada, and they were going to publish my book, and I was elated. And the talks went on for weeks on end, and we were supposed to meet on Thursday for dinner in Vancouver to sign the contract, and everything was going to be laid out in a bed of roses, and and I was just so excited to get the book published. And on Wednesday, the editor phoned me and she said, "Scott, don't come down tomorrow." And I was like, "Oh, you've got to be kidding." She says, "Yeah, don't come down. You'll know on Friday, but don't come down to sign the contract tomorrow." And I said, "Okay, sure, great." And I jumped in my truck and drove out in the bush and and I just sat on top of a mountain and stared out over and just couldn't believe like what the hell is going on here. And on Friday, it was announced on Global News that my publishing house that it was going to pick me up, file Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So I was like, oh, that's what it is. So there was this little piece, where I thought I had been beaten down to the last ounce of my being on this whole project, and she actually saved me from locking into a contract I wouldn't have been able to get out of, and there would have been 5 years of nothing while they tried to regroup and remanufacture their publishing house. And the interesting part of that is that a month later I was picked up by an American publisher, and I mean, breaking into the US market in itself is next to impossible as a Canadian author. So here I am. I'm a Canadian writer with an American publisher, and I'm doing great. So, the royalty checks aren't there, but the story's out, and that's what it was really about. So
exactly.
And so you just never know, right?
Yep. There's a great comment here that goes right along with this from you guessed it, Winter Storm 427. Sean, bringing heat every day. Clarity happens when you are starving and hungry. When you are full and warm, you lose sight of what you need and focus on what you want only. Strip away the excess mentally, physically, intellectually, and get hungry again. I think that's a great point. I think it goes along with what we're talking about, is that really it's very difficult to recognize how good you have it while it's good. And it takes effort to then recognize it. You have to strip those things away before you can process where you're at. I think, Sean, you and I talked about this on one of the first lives we did, was like, if you want to go somewhere, the first thing you got to figure out is, where are you? If you don't know where that is, then you're kind of lost. Any thoughts on those two comments there?
Yeah, I do it on the regular. I ride a lot. I've been riding for a long time. I don't even know how many rides I've got under my belt. A lot. But every once in a while, like when the weather's bad, particularly, I'll get on my bike and I'll wear old school. Like, not all my high-tech fancy boy gear, not all my gear that allows me to face any adversity. I'll go out in cotton. Like, I'll ride in the suck wearing sucky stuff, so that it's kind of it's a good reset, man. Like, oh yeah, I used to be able to do this and put up with it, and I still can. But man, I really appreciate Gore-Tex nowadays. So, you kind of got to sometimes not only go out when it's bad, but you got to make it double bad. I've said this before, double dip on the adversity, so that it's questionable while you're out there. Not on if you're going to survive. I'm not saying that. Don't get all crazy. But you got to make it kind of questionable on how bad the day's going to be, so that you can really appreciate the good days. You need the left and right arcs. You need the bandwidth, man. You got to face suck in order to understand awesome.
Very true. Absolutely true. I did this. My uncle asked me this one day. I went hunting a few years back, and it was a really cold October. We had lots of snow, and it was minus 20 something out where I had set up my camp to go hunting. And my uncle was like, "Oh, you can just stay. You can stay at our place. You'll be okay." And I brought all my gear. I'm good. I can handle, being out there. And there were lots of opportunities where I could have just gone into town, stayed in a hotel, or I could have, stayed at my uncle's place where it was nice and warm. But I wanted to push myself. I wanted to see if I could, last the night in minus 20 in my tent in the middle of nowhere with no one else, just because sometimes you got to push that envelope just to be sure that you're still capable. And otherwise, you'll never know.
Yeah. And so what? So what? Even if you aren't, big deal. Like, you're out there until 1 o'clock in the morning. You put your hands up in the air and say, "That's it. I'm done. I'm freaking freezing. I thought I had this, but I don't." Oh, you bust into town. You give it another try, another time. Doesn't mean that you're all in and you're all in play. If it doesn't work out, then you're done. You're not done. You're just learning a lesson for another moment. That's all.
Actually, the next day, on my way home from walking around looking for elk, I threw my back out and I had to pack up my camp and I had to put it away because there was no way that I'd be able to manage in that cold with the amount of pain I was in and still be able to wake up the next morning and carry on. So I had to okay, we're done. Call it for this year, come back next year. It's not the end of the world. It's just right now, right here, I have to call it quits. Okay. Try harder next time. Try more next time. Try to figure out what to do next
And
time.
maybe some more core exercises in between now and then.
Definitely more core exercises. Yes, we did. There was a lot of that. Don't worry. Yeah. And here's another comment from Winterstorm 427. When we insulate ourselves all the time from adversity and the suck, we aren't able to appreciate what we go through. We don't feel the enormity and therefore don't feel the accomplishment. 100%.
Yeah. One thing I think I always like to drop in, when we have guys like you guys that are here and dropping some knowledge on here, I always love to bring it back to a little bit of balance, as in, there was a time in my life when we released, and I had a couple of chat actually just recently about a few vets that reached out and say, hey, Bruno, do you know any group that does this or other veterans than just the gung-ho veteran, let's keep going war stuff, kind of, because there are some groups that are still doing that. And I'm like, you know what? I'm getting where you're at, because there was a time that I was following the Jocko and the David Goggins and then this and Tony Robbins. And you're like, yes, go, 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 go. And not realizing that rest, recovery, reset, reevaluate is part of this whole process. Because there was a time and point where I felt like I was never achieving anything, that I wasn't successfully, because I wasn't, comparison is the thief of all joy. And if you're constantly chasing these big numbers, I felt like I was like never good enough at some points, that I went, well, wait a minute. That's what I meant about, and Chance, you kind of said it, you just didn't use self-awareness. You just used another word, and I wanted to kind of point it out, is basically comes back to that self-awareness. What is my outcome? What is it that I want? What is it that I need, and how will I know that I have it? And I find, like you were saying, the example of at 1 o'clock throwing your hands up going, okay, I'm done. I agree with that. I agree with staying when you can, is picking your battles and knowing, if I fail this one, whether that consequence is self-awareness again. You know what I'm saying? Because I think that sometimes, especially veterans, we can be so hard on ourselves because we know what we're capable of.
Hey,
we know high standards, right?
Nobody beats me up like I do.
Exactly. And my wife says it to me all the
I'll
time.
go head to head with you on me beating me up versus you beating you up.
Right? And that's what it is. It's, my wife goes, baby, you gotta remember, not everybody has the same standard about showing up on time, about if you say you do something. Most people just say this stuff for fun because it sounds nice, or they feel a certain way, which is the actual truth. When they say the yes, they feel a certain way, and then a few days later they might not feel like that. So now you realize that it's better to give a clean no than a dirty yeses. How many dirty yeses in a day? And that might be, are you saying yes to this suck because that's what you think that, Chance or Shaun or Scott, when you guys are riding or doing something hard, thinking, oh, I can't quit today because Bruno is going to judge me, or Scott's going to say something. Oh, haha, you didn't stay in your ice tub, Bruno, for 5 minutes. Today was just 4:35. You couldn't do it the whole time, right? I build stories like that in my head. I build stories about the guys that I haven't seen in like 20, 30 years that are still ragging on me, going, hey, dude, I'm not running fast enough. I'm not, staying in the ice tub long enough. I'm not doing enough this or enough that, because I still hear those voices.
Well, how many of us have
Yeah, it's good to have accountability, though. It's good to have accountability.
Yeah, but the thing is that, like, I got 1,000 of them. I only need 1 or 2.
How many of us have stood in the washroom and looked in the mirror and had those exact same fights with ourselves,
Yeah.
Because, what are you doing right now? Well, I'm just arguing with Bruno right now, but about,
it was an incident from 20 years ago in maintenance shop.
What he's gonna rag on me about now?
I It is, and I actually have an interesting story about this. Is that when I first started doing advocacy work, when I first started getting out in the world, and I started telling my story and started doing all these things, there were people from the past that start jumping on you. And they're like, "Oh, that didn't happen that way. Oh, you weren't that," and it just becomes this barking comparison. Well, this is what I did, and this is what you did, and eventually, I got to a point where I was like, it doesn't matter what they think at all. Like even in the slightest, it doesn't matter what they think. What matters is what I am doing and why I'm doing it. And I think that goes back to what we were saying earlier. Once you know why you're doing it, and if it's a righteous endeavor, give her. Just give her.
Well, here's just an extra layer to that, because I do recall a time, it would have been about maybe 3/4 of a year-ish ago, where I was getting into this game and trying to be more helpful for veterans and so on and so forth. And of course, Chance had been on your podcast and several others at this point. And some dude who had been in my DMs for some time and who I'd been trying to help for some time, he dropped into my DMs and he started chirping about Chance and saying some things that I thought were ignorant. And I let him have his little song and dance moment. And then I backstopped him with, really? Demonstrate some evidence on that. Really? Because you must be talking about another guy, another Chance Burles that I don't know. Because that's not the way I see it. Really? You're going to say that? That's not true? Or if it's true or not, you're saying it just to be mean-spirited and ignorant? Here's the thing, pal. That's not how I roll. And here's how I roll. And he got a double barrel from me. And so, and he wasn't used to that. He was used to rolling up, saying his piece, and then rolling out, and no one pushing back. I never give hallway passes to that stuff. And so when he bounced up against me, bounced up against the wrong guy. He got it, and he never came back for it again. He was put on his marching orders. And so that's what I will always do anytime someone rolls up in my DMs and says nonsense. You're going to get pushback. But you're definitely going to get pushback if you want to take the past and use it for your own personal agenda to distort it into your own personal message that's bouncing around in your own little peanut. That I don't care if it's true or not, any of the things that he was saying. This is what I do care about. Chance is a good dude, man, and he's doing righteous things. And I'm going to lend him supporting fire all day long, you bonehead. And so, if you want to be a goof, if you don't want to live a good life, if your game is to try to tear other people down, you ain't my cup of tea. Go find somewhere else to hang out.
Yeah, you can bust your knuckles on knuckleheads your whole life and never make a dent in them.
Yeah, my same metaphor for that, Scott, is you realize that you're in a fight with a pig, but the pig doesn't mind that it's going to get dirty here, right? They're just trying to get you to be into the pen.
Yeah.
But just to add on of what both of you guys said about, in the military, only as good as your last stories. And then Chance brought that up. He says, you know what? There were stories about guys saying, no, it wasn't like this, and it was like this, or no, that's not what happened. And then you got some people. This is what I've seen because I know people have said things about me on national forums and everything that's saying, no, that's not how it went. This is what it did. And none of these people were there. None of them were there. There was none. Everybody had their little piece to chip in. But for me to get around that and to understanding was that we all have different filters. Remember when I was saying earlier that some of us are big picture kind of guys and other people are kind of detail oriented. That's kind of like I'm generalizing as well, because in between there's some of that stuff. And also the human brain either generalizes, distorts, or deletes.
Yeah.
And that's why the police, when they want to reconstruct a scene, they need 2 or more witnesses, because then Chance might have seen the lady that didn't do her signal, or the guy that ran through the red, but other people have seen different things. And this is what it is that it is possible that you're going to have 2 people that were in Bosnia or Afghanistan at the same place at the same time tell you the story in 2 different ways. We just got to be understanding about that, because I've seen a lot of people being accused of stolen valor or of saying, yeah, you weren't there, or this person, and the whole time they were there, especially support trades. Right? A lot of guys, they talk about, when you're in the combat arms, but the support trades are there. I know because I was one, right? So a lot of times guys aren't noticing who is around there and telling those stories. So that's the first one. And then the second one is, you brought on about this guy who doesn't like someone. I tell this to everybody, is that there's going to people out there that aren't going to like you. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Sometimes I'm very gentle, sometimes a little bit more rough around the edges when you need to snap somebody out of there, or you got to do something. Not everybody's going to be everybody's flavor. Like the way that I coach is totally different than the way that you guys coach, or the type of work that I do with veterans. And I think that's the beauty of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some people that aren't gonna like us for whatever reason, right?
Yeah.
For
100%.
whatever reason. Yeah.
And memory is fallible 100%.
Oh, of course, it always distorts, because if we didn't distort, we couldn't achieve our goals.
Yeah.
But the thing is that
but
we've all been there.
it's not about memory. I don't care if a guy's got a memory or not. It's not about memory. It's about doing the right thing.
Yep.
And if you're going to roll up on me and chirp about a friend of mine, and it's a pile of nonsense, whether you've got like a beautiful mind memory or not, immaterial to me. You want to be a clown? You're going to get treated like a clown. Move along. And so no one has to be a clown. If you take issue with someone's sense of how something played out, or something they've said in the past, and you don't believe it to be true based on what you experienced as you were standing there, there's a way to do it. And it's like this: communicate with the guy in a respectful way. Don't try to stab them in the back by being mean-spirited. I'm just saying.
There's something that just spurred this with me, is if we look at time frames, when you're in high school, there was kids that didn't like you and you didn't like them, and you move down the road after high school, and we tell our kids this as well: don't get too hung up on the stuff that's happening in school, because when you're done, you'll probably never see that person, or there's a good chance you'll never see that person again in your life. And the same can be said for when we leave the CAF, because there's lots of guys I've never seen again, and I'm okay with that. And it's funny because now, 30, almost 40 decades later, those kids that didn't like me in school, they're actually like, hey, Scott, thanks for, everything that you're doing for vets, and thanks for, having a voice. And, it's interesting how every so often that comes around. So I don't concern myself too much with how people, judge me today, because it's irrelevant.
That's exactly it. It is absolutely irrelevant, because
whatever people think about me is none of my business, my man.
that's it.
Yeah.
That's
Oh
exactly
yeah,
it.
but what they think about my friends, that's a whole different
That's a
conversation.
different story. Yeah, exactly.
And I'll just leave this with this about behaviors like that, right? Because Shaun was saying about this guy that comes in barrels blasting about Chance and all these things. For me, as like, you could say this as well, and Shaun, you played it very well. You let him have a little bit more context and tell your story and everything, and then you could redirect and say, hey, well, that's not how I see it and everything. For me, I also think behind every single human behavior, there's a positive intention. So when you're telling this story about this guy that out of the blue tells you that, he doesn't like a certain person, like, okay, I'm going to listen. For me, I was like, what's the outcome this person wanted to look for? Why was the behavior of coming out and telling you this? I think it was because he was looking for connection. And a lot of guys and girls that I've served in the military get to, even I see it in this, a lot in the civilian world, actually, where people connect with shitty stories. Because we're being conditioned and trained like that by TV. It's all about shitty stories. And I think that's either Socrates or Plato, when he says, before you tell me anything, is it true? Is it correct? And is it beneficial?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that will stop people right there in their tracks, because first of all, you're telling them like a philosophical kind of question, but the other ones, they're like, wait a minute. Oh, self-awareness. Is it true? Is it correct? Like, for 100%, you sure that it's correct? And is it beneficial?
Yeah. Well, and you know what they say, the only thing worse than the truth is a scandal, right? So,
yep, that's 100% it. So we've been rolling for just over an hour here, boys. And first off, I can't thank you all enough. Scott, I really appreciate you being here. I really appreciate you fighting through the audio issues and sticking with us. It was awesome. Bruno, again, thanks for jumping on last minute. This was a great conversation. There's lots of there's gold. There was gold today. That was just dropped all over the place.
Thanks for inviting me. You guys are awesome, man. I love this conversation. We should do
Yeah, it
this
was good.
like more often for sure.
We're here to help. This is what it is. Sean,
It's what we're doing.
Yeah,
it's what we love. It's why we're doing it. It's
Mhm.
We're not talking about stripping and assembling a C7. We're talking about dudes in life trying to do life better, irrespective of our service or not. No one's special. We're just trying to do it better. And I dig what we're doing. And the reason I dig it is because I get to hang out with cool dudes who like to keep it real and talk about dude things. So well done, boys. Thanks for joining us.
Sweet.
Yeah, awesome. Scott, you got any final points on anything we were working on or talking about?
Die living.
Nice. That's the way.
I love that.
Bruno, you got any final points?
No, this is it, guys. Thank you very much. I thought this conversation was great, even though that we all went on tangent. We kept it pretty within the bumpers, which was great. I loved it, and I'd love to come back again.
Absolutely. The open invite for both of you for sure. Anytime. We're doing these every day. So if you got, you're hanging out at home, you're like, I wonder what's going on in the collective. Shoot me a message. We'll get you on. We're going to be talking about stuff all day.
I'll tell you what's going on. A whole pile of awesome is what's going on. So, just write it down.
That's it. Okay. And on behalf of us, Shaun and myself and the crew here at the collective, I can't thank y'all enough for hanging out and watching and commenting and asking questions. There's some really great stuff here.
You guys got a crew?
We got.
I don't have a crew.
There's a crew. there's one other.
You got a crew,
dude. It's the Fonzie crew. Get with the program.
Yeah, sit on it, Potsy.
Yeah.
I love it. Chance got a crew. I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah. There's people behind me. You just can't see them. They're all ninjas. It's great. Totally. Awesome. But yeah, I can't thank y'all enough for joining us. It has been awesome. If you haven't yet, make sure you you subscribe, you hit the little bell thing so you get the notifications on whenever we go live, which will be again every day. And I'm glad that you joined us as we learn, build, and grow here on the collective. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Chimo.